In the 90s, independent film had returned with full force. Companies like Miramax were giving out budgets to a new generation of filmmakers who were obsessed with dialogue and irony. Figures like Steven Soderbergh, Paul Thomas Anderson, Robert Rodriguez, and Quentin Tarantino would emerge from this era, attracting audiences and Oscars with their films. But one of my personal favorite filmmakers from that era is Noah Baumbach. Baumbach primarily interests me because he's built his career on a seemingly fundamental contradiction. Baumbach is an East Coast intellectual elitist, steeped in New York City academic pretentiousness. Yet his films are uncompromisingly authentic. His films are comedies, but his characters are achingly realistic. They talk too much, but more importantly, they feel too much. More specifically, many of Baumbach's most obnoxious characters are eerily relatable if you've ever encountered a narcissist. However, no matter how neurotic these characters can be, it's hard not to see ourselves in their reflection. Some say Baumbach is just another pretentious New York artist. However, he doesn't examine his characters in a judgmental tone from afar. In fact, Baumbach implicates himself and the audience from the eye of the storm. Like the films of Scorsese, which Baumbach is a huge fan of, his films function almost like confessionals. Perhaps the reason Baumbach's films are so enduring is because there's comfort in watching them, even if the experience can be emotionally stressful. Continually, Baumbach illustrates that if family can grow and harbor neuroses, it can also be a place of healing from it. Squid the Whale serves as a Rosetta Stone for everything that would follow from Baumbach. It's all here, practically at the beginning. Squid is notoriously autobiographical in many regards. In Squid, Baumbach paints a hyper-specific portrait of his 80s childhood in New York City, a world of academic pretensions, tennis courts, and a disintegrating intellectual family. However, what truly makes the film resonate is its depth of character. Jeff Daniels essentially plays Baumbach's father as Bernard Berkman. If you've seen the film, you know that Bernard is a brutally honest depiction of intellectual narcissism. Bernard is an aging novelist who weaponizes taste and intellect to dominate his family members. When divorce is imminent, Bernard goes through a violent midlife crisis, seeing his wife's need for independence as a threat to his perceived superiority. Unfortunately, his son Walt, the Noah Baumbach stand-in, absorbs his father's toxicity. Soon, Walt has to learn the hard way that you can't mistake imitation for identity. In Squid, we're given several key, authentic insights into family trauma. First, yes, oftentimes parents can influence their children, both in a hereditary way and also socially. Sometimes children have to fight against their parental influence to grow. But we also see fractures like a divorce, although common, can permanently fracture psyches, especially the psyches of children. Unlike many family dramas, Squid doesn't make any grand dramatic gestures or railroad us with plot. Baumbach keeps the focus on the characters grappling with themes he knows all too well. Yet by plumbing through the emotional depths of his childhood, Baumbach found both his voice and his universality. If The Squid and the Whale is about avoiding inherited narcissism, then Margot at the Wedding is about embodying that narcissism. Nicole Kidman's character Margot is a ruthless egomaniac who lashes out at her family with her status and ego. She resists or is incapable of empathy even for her own child, who is forced to absorb it all. Children in Baumbach movies are feral, ruthless little goblin babies, which is unbelievably accurate if you have kids or are around kids. However, it all points back to the parents. When narcissists have children, oftentimes their kids just become pawns. The Squid and the Whale examine narcissism from the child's perspective. But Margot is fascinating because Baumbach uses Margot to examine his own flaws as an artist, balancing work and family. In Margot at the Wedding, Baumbach deals with his own artistic pretentiousness and how alienating his writing can be toward his family. For me, Margot is a far tougher watch than Squid and the Whale. Margot is so neurotic and self-absorbed as a character, we see that ultimately she's just very sad. She's entirely motivated out of fear. And while we're on Margot at the Wedding, it's important to note that one of the cast members is Jennifer Jason Leigh. Baumbach met Leigh in 2001, and they would end up marrying and having a child together. This union prompted Baumbach to spend a lot more time in Los Angeles. Baumbach finally had a nuclear family unit of his own. Greenberg is born out of Baumbach's extensive time in LA during the 2000s. In Greenberg, Ben Stiller plays an abrasive, neurotic character who falls in love with a younger, free-spirited woman played by Greta Gerwig. Greenberg, a New York City native, is furious that he's stuck house-sitting in LA, and he constantly bemoans how much it sucks in comparison to his home. Gerwig's character Florence is the exact opposite of Greenberg, but somehow she manages to get through his rough exterior. In the filmography of Baumbach, it signals that there is romantic hope for certain neurotics who feel out of place and out of touch. Almost immediately after the film came out, Baumbach and Leigh would split, and not long after that, Baumbach and Gerwig would begin publicly dating, which led many to believe that an affair led to the divorce.
So you may know that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach finally got married after 12 years of dating. But do you know the crazy history behind the relationship? I'm going to break it down as briefly as I can. Noah Baumbach and Jennifer Jason Leigh start dating in 2001. Noah directs Margot at the Wedding, which stars Leigh, who he claims is his muse. After this, Baumbach and Leigh co-write Greenberg, which stars Greta Gerwig. 8 months after Greenberg was released, Leigh files for divorce from Baumbach. During the time of their divorce, Baumbach writes Madagascar 3, as well as almost signing on to direct Mr. Popper's Penguins. Noah Baumbach begins dating Greta Gerwig, who he claims is now his new muse and collaborator. And the two insist that their relationship began after the split.
Co-written by Gerwig, Frances Ha is still about Baumbach's usual obsessions, but Gerwig's perspective adds to his beautifully. Frances is a struggling artist in New York City, unable to get her shit together in a sea of missed opportunities and opportunistic hipsters. Frances Ha is self-absorbed, but the film's treatment of her is forgiving. Despite the ultra-specific setting, the film has garnered a significantly large audience, especially on Letterboxd, for its relatable themes. Frances Ha fits nicely into a subgenre you could call quarter-life crisis core, or maybe quarter-life crisis cinema, QLCC. That doesn't sound very good. Even if you've never been to the Big Apple, you've been where Frances has been. The section where Frances visits Paris, only to be disappointed, makes the authentic point that if you're not happy inside, no change of setting, whether it's New York City or Paris, will change your life suddenly. Stylistically, the film owes a massive debt to the French New Wave. But the film is still entirely enjoyable for an audience, even if they don't know why it's specifically in black and white. Gerwig was about 27 when she met Baumbach, who was about 41. So it makes sense that Baumbach would reckon with his increasing age for the rest of his filmography. But instead of hiding himself in the past, Baumbach instead continually wrestles with the changing world and how it affects family. In While We're Young, Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts play a well-to-do, if burnt-out, middle-aged couple in New York City. But their stagnation is broken when they meet a hip, younger couple. Desperately, Stiller and Watts try to copy their new friend's ways to feel young again, but eventually our middle-aged couple have a reckoning. By the end, they see that what they've built, even their broken and unfulfilled dreams, makes up who they truly are. In a similar fashion, Mistress America discusses lost characters searching for identity. But Mistress America is almost like an inversion of While We Were Young. Or more accurately, it's like a dark alternative version of Frances Ha. In this film, we follow Taylor, a young girl who's just moved to the Big Apple. She's lost and nervous. But everything changes when she meets Brooke, played by Greta Gerwig. Brooke seems to have it all. But like with any Baumbach film, the cracks start to appear. Eventually, Taylor has to figure out how to forge her own identity. Brooke is eerily reminiscent of Margot, or if Frances broke and built an immense shell to protect herself from true growth and social climb instead. My favorite Baumbach film has to be The Squid and the Whale, but The Meyer Out Stories was the first Baumbach film I saw and truly fell in love with. My affinity for these two films actually makes a lot of sense because they're heavily linked. In this film, three siblings reunite at their parents' New York City apartment, only for old family trauma to bubble up at every turn. In particular, we focus on the brothers, played by Ben Stiller and Adam Sandler, who struggle to deal with their narcissistic father, played by Dustin Hoffman. It's as if the brothers from The Squid and the Whale have come back home to see if their father has changed, only to be disappointed once again. But Baumbach knows it's important to reckon with your past so you don't make the same mistakes. It only makes sense that it would take Baumbach a while to directly deal with his own divorce. But when he does in A Marriage Story, it's a doozy. Yet somehow Marriage Story walks both a fine line between melodrama and dark comedy. It's impossible to ignore the autobiographical parallels to Baumbach's own divorce from Jennifer Jason Leigh. But what makes the film remarkable is how it transcends that specificity, because at its core, Marriage Story is about two people who love each other but cannot make it work. Despite the hyper-specific story here, a writer and actress who go through a divorce across LA and New York City, A Marriage Story insightfully deals with universal emotions. Both characters are, in their own ways, narcissistic. They prioritize their needs, their careers, their sense of self, but they're also empathetic, loving, and human. Baumbach doesn't vilify either side. Instead, he presents neuroses as an inevitable part of being human. The question isn't whether we are selfish, it's whether we can recognize it and if we can grow from it. With White Noise, Baumbach attempts something a little different. Adapted from Don DeLillo... I'm not going to be able to say this. Adapted from Don DeLillo... I have the book, I literally own the book. Adapted from Don DeLillo's novel, the film expands beyond the intimate, dialogue-driven framework that defines his best work. In fact, White Noise is more like a fantastical satire. The specificity that made Baumbach's films feel universal is diluted here. The characters feel like ideas rather than people. White Noise has plenty of merits, but it feels like Baumbach is stepping outside of his strengths. And in that expansion, like with Barbie, the intimacy that defines Baumbach's best work gets lost. Thankfully, with Baumbach's more recent work, like J. Kelly, he appears to be returning to what he does best. One of Baumbach's most underrated strengths is how he casts. In many ways, George Clooney is the perfect Baumbach protagonist. Behind all his charm is a carefully constructed identity, the likes of which Baumbach has spent his entire career deconstructing. If there's one main thing we can glean from Baumbach's filmography, it's that you can't choose where you're born, and you can't choose who your family is. Thankfully, Baumbach was able to grow and share his insights through film. Oftentimes, Baumbach presents us with difficult characters who continually get in their own way or find themselves lost in strange lands that they once called home. But there's always hope and the possibility of growth. Obviously, Noah Baumbach's films are fictional. However, they present us with enough truth that no matter how much we see ourselves or our families reflected in the mirror, we can find peace and a meaningful life beyond our past, beyond our trauma.
I sound stoned. I'm not stoned. Thanks for dinner. Bye.
Oh, bye.